everyone, and welcome to another casual review. Just this moment, right now, I have beat Metroid Dread and wrapped up my Metroid marathon. And there's nothing I would rather do right now than discuss it out into the void and share all of my feelings about Metroid Dread and just the Metroid series as a whole. I'm very, very hyped up, especially right now because I beat the game, but also because this is the first game that I have played on my new Nintendo Switch OLED, and this game just looks awesome on it. I bet it looks great on the original Nintendo Switch as well. I'm not usually much of a stickler for the a whole like resolution and graphics fidelity, but I just know that this is the best way to be playing Metroid Dread, and I'm so happy that I can finally play this game on the best possible hardware that I can. It's definitely fun being part of the current conversation because if you have followed me for a while, you know that I just kind of play whatever random game I feel like. Usually these games I get on a budget that are like out for years at a time, and so it's really fun being a part of the conversation, playing this brand new game alongside with everybody else. That being said, I think I have to be a little more mindful of spoilers here, so I am going to try and be very restrictive of what I say rather than just blabbing my mouth about whatever. But as far as the video goes, you might not want to watch the video because I tried to be as mindful as possible, not record a ton of like boss fights or cinematics or anything like that. But you are going to see some of the upgrades that you can get in this game. And if you consider that a spoiler, maybe just listen. Maybe not watch any of the video because you will see some of that stuff here. So if you've never played a Metroid game before, they do have a nice previously on. Before you start out the game, they kind of go into the story a little bit, tell you everything you need to know. So you can just hop right into this Metroid Dread if you wish. However, I would recommend maybe, if you can potentially get your hands on it, play Metroid Fusion before this one, because this is like a direct sequel to that one. It might reference a couple of the other games, but Metroid Fusion is the one you really should play first. Granted, I think you should play every single one of these 2D Metroid games because I think that they are all phenomenal. And this game does have a ton of Metroid fan service as well. Just little winks and nods to people who have played the other 2D Metroid games. So it was an absolute blast being able to play through all of the Metroid games leading up to this one, and I'm certain glad I did. I heartily recommend it for everyone to do. So that being said, Metroid Dread takes place on a brand new planet. It might have been in the Prime games or Other M because I didn't play those. I only played the 2D Metroid games. This planet is called ZDR, and a video clip was sent to the Federation that has footage of an X-Parasite living on it. And so Samus Aran, because she is infused with Metroid DNA, she's like pretty much the only one that is equipped to handle these X-Parasites, and they pretty much have to be eradicated from the universe, or that can mean devastation for everyone. So the Federation sent Samus Aran to this new planet ZDR to go investigate. It is such a huge leap for the 2D Metroid genre. Granted, it is kind of similar to Metroid Samus Returns, but this is just like a whole new foray. Samus Returns was a remake of a Game Boy game, and just the graphic fidelity of this one, it looks so awesome. Everything is so polished. It is the ultimate 2D Metroid game for sure, even just as far as the visuals go. I won't say necessarily for everyone. Everyone is going to agree with me as far as gameplay goes, but visually, wow, this looks amazing. And just the sounds and the audio and just a little, you can even hear your computer Adam talk for the first time rather than just reading text dialogue like in Metroid Fusion. It is such a treat. You do have to check in with Adam just like in Metroid Fusion. That's why I think it shares a lot of similarities to Metroid Fusion. So it doesn't make it necessary in order to progress through the story. You don't have to check in with Adam, but you might as well. And the computer will kind of give you little hints and kind of guide you along your way. But it is not so straightforward as it is in Metroid Fusion, where it has a waypoint directly where you need to go. Adam just kind of says like, hey, this place is frozen over, you need to melt it somehow, go figure out how to melt it. So he'll kind of lead you into the general direction, but you're still going to have to do quite a lot of exploring on your own. That being said though, as far as linearity goes, I feel like they've really kind of mastered the whole player mentality here, and they just kind of guide you along the right way. I never felt lost at any real point, maybe a couple sections, but I never felt lost because I was slowly being guided in the right direction, just as like progress is being sectioned off and stuff like that. It never felt like it was in Super Metroid where I was just mindlessly wandering. This one, it just felt like it was a curated path, but I still felt like I was exploring, even though I probably still was being guided down a certain hallway, you know? Once again, we lost all of our powers, so in order to progress, we have to go and acquire all of these cool upgrades and unique things, and I just wanted to talk about upgrades for a second. I'm not specifically going to say anything new about upgrades, but I am going to say that you do get the Morph Ball. That's in every single Metroid game, so I don't think it's that much of a spoiler. But the order that they give Samus her upgrades is a little out of whack. Like, it's different than all of the other 2D Metroid games, and it's kind of funny because how they tailored this map and curated this world. I just feel like I took some of the upgrades for granted back when I would get them early on, early in a Metroid game, you know, because what's the first upgrade that Samus always gets in the other 2D Metroid games? It would be the Morph Ball. Usually you get the Morph Ball first. In this game, because they added her ability to slide briefly, like through narrow corridors, it's a really smooth and fluid mechanic here. I just feel like Samus moves so fluidly and nice in this, but you don't get the Morph Ball until actually like maybe the midway point of the game. And because I took the Morph Ball for granted so much, it just made me really appreciate abilities like the Morph Ball and other ones that I won't mention here. But it's the order that you get these upgrades is so different than what I'm used to. And when I finally do get those upgrades in this game, it's just like, yes, finally I can do that, even though it's something that I used to be able to do at the beginning of all of the other Metroid games. There are a couple other abilities like the slide ability that she starts out with, her counter ability, but they added this moving counter ability that does actual damage, and it just increases the flow so well for Samus. Like, I can't emphasize enough how fluid she feels. It's like butter, you know? It's like the ultimate way to control Samus, and that is why I'm really, really hoping that this company in particular makes a remake of Super Metroid with this kind of control scheme. That would be awesome. I don't feel like the counters themselves are as necessary as they were in Samus Returns. However, I feel like if you do pull off these counters, it is just like instant death for a regular enemy. Maybe not a boss, but you can still rack up a ton of damage on a boss if you are able to land one of these counter abilities. Wall jumps themselves are easier to pull off than ever. That's another reason why I wish that these guys would make a remake of Super Metroid, because wall jumps in Super Metroid are a little difficult for me to pull off. I just see videos of people doing it like it's nothing though, so maybe I just need to get good. On the topic of getting good, this game is the most difficult 2D Metroid game. Maybe not, as far as the ones that I played at least. Maybe the original Metroid is just so head-scratchingly difficult, but this game, it's tough. It's tougher than the other ones that I've played through, but not unfairly so. So I want to talk mostly about the bosses themselves. I feel like every time I encounter a new boss, I just get my butt handed to me. I get destroyed, and I'm just like, how am I supposed to do this? And I keep on trying over and over again. And as I'm playing, I kind of absorb these visual cues, you know, like this boss, when he raises his arm like this, he's going to do this attack. So I need to move into this position, or I need to get ready to counter this attack. And you just pick up on these cues, and eventually during the battle, when you finally do beat these bosses, they don't even touch you. It just feels so easy and choreographed because you know exactly what these bosses are going to do and you know exactly how to handle it. This is another compliment that I want to give to this game, is in all of the other 2D Metroid games, you just revert back to your save in the save room in particular whenever you fight a boss, and you have to work your way back up to that boss. In this game, it just is very, very generous with its checkpoints, which I think is needed for a difficulty curve like this, where it just pops you right back outside of the room that the boss is in. So I really appreciate that, not having to revert all the way back to my previous save. The checkpoints in this game are so appreciated, and I really needed them for my least favorite part of this game. I may be a little bit on the controversial side here, but this game introduces these robots known as Emmys. And this is my least favorite part of the game, because at the beginning of each of these Emmy encounters, you need to play very stealthily. These things will hunt you down, and if you don't counter them at the right time, you're dead. Like, it's an instant death. And they give you very random, very hard to pull off counter chances just to kind of get away, but they don't expect you to land these counters at all. If an Emmy catches you, most likely you are dead, and you have to pop back up to that checkpoint. And I don't like these stealthy sections, hide from the Emmys, like just try to avoid them. In most cases, I would just try to run through their Emmy zones as quick as possible. They don't cover the whole map, which I am very, very grateful for, but the Emmy zones cover a large section of the map, and I just felt like the Emmy zones in particular weren't that interesting. They were more of this mechanical, computerized aesthetic, and the Emmys are just stalking these zones. You just constantly need to be aware of where the Emmys are at all time and how to avoid them, because these things have scanners and they will hunt you down. I don't know. It was just frustrating, and I kind of expressed this worry when I played through Metroid Zero Mission, and I said I hope that Metroid Dread doesn't have stealthy sections like this, because it was my least favorite part about Metroid Zero Mission, and this just ramps it up to 100. It is even more difficult than I thought the end section of Metroid Zero Mission was. Now, it isn't always like this. You can explore these Emmy zones without the Emmys later in the game, but I just felt like they were full of nothing. Maybe like 1 or 2 upgrades in these Emmy zones, but for the most part, it was a big chunk of the map that didn't have a whole lot of interest going on. They do populate it with common enemies when the robotic Emmys aren't around, but I don't know. As far as the stealth goes and these Emmy zones, my least favorite part of the game, I would say. Other than the Emmy zones, though, this is my favorite Metroid planet to explore. Maybe it's just because of the updated visuals, but just aesthetically, it looks so cool. And I mentioned earlier, I just think that my pathway is curated so well. They know where I will instinctually want to explore next, and they curate this whole pathway and world around that. I will say it's not as linear as Fusion, but you do backtrack to the other sections of the world, just like in Fusion, and these sections of the world will manipulate over time, like in Fusion. Like one point you go into there and it's all frozen over, and the next point you go into there and it's melted, and this will alter your pathway as well. I felt like it wasn't nearly as exploration based as it was in Super Metroid, and sometimes I kind of wish that it was, because I would unlock certain upgrades and I want to go back to points of interest that I was at before, but I felt like my pathway never really led to those places until the end of the game, when it all just opens up, because they have these teleporters, but these teleporters only go to the corresponding color of teleporter doors. So it makes it more difficult to backtrack than it was in Metroid Samus Returns, where any teleporter would work with any one. Like I said, though, this all just opens up at the end of the game. When you get all of your powers and abilities, you can totally backtrack and get everything, which I surprisingly did. Unlike all of the other 2D Metroid games, this is a shorter game, but if you've played any 2D Metroid game, you are familiar with this concept. And I just felt like it was a new game, and I was just loving being in it. I was loving controlling Samus. So once I finally did upgrade my power suit to get everything that I possibly could on the planet, I wanted to go back and get all of the extra missile capacities and all of that stuff, like extra life force and everything. So I did 100% complete this game. And if you haven't been keeping track of my other Metroid playthroughs, usually I get around 60 or 70%. So just be aware that this is a shorter game if you put that into consideration when buying a brand new $60 game like this. But I did get all of the upgrades, and I had a clear time of 10 hours and 10 minutes. So if you are just going straight through the main story, you could potentially beat this game in like maybe 5 to 7 hours, I would guess. It was fun going back to collect all of the things though, and just putting on a podcast and listening to something, gathering up every extra missile capacity that I possibly could. It will even help you out a little bit here, where sometimes I'm not sure what the prerequisites of having this pop up, but when you pull up at your map, there will be highlighted areas of upgrades for your power suit that you have missed. So it will kind of guide you in the right direction if you are missing any upgrade in the section of the map. I gotta say though, I hate how it represents the unexplored parts on the map, where in previous Metroid games, if you've played them, you'll unlock this map of this section of this world. And this map has these rooms that have like maybe like 30% opacity. They're see-through, and that represents that you haven't been in this room yet. So when you go through the room, then it becomes 100% opacity, like you can't see through it, and this represents that you have explored this room before. In a lot of the Metroid games that I played through, each room had its own highlighted color. And then in Metroid Samus Returns, it was kind of like grid-based, so it was big sections of the room, and you have to explore every section of the room in order for it to all get filled in. In this one, it is like not quite a pixel, but they are very, 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 very tiny squares, and you have to go through all of them in order to represent that you have explored everything in this room. Now, this absolutely is not necessary for the completion rate of this game to explore all of the map, but it's just my weird lizard brain where I felt like I had to explore every teeny tiny little pixel of the room in order to feel like I have completely exhausted what the room has to offer. If that makes any sense at all, it is just, it's not necessary, it's just a little nitpick of mine, but you might even see in some of my video where I just feel like I have to jump into every single corner of the room in order to feel like I fully explored it. The map itself takes a little bit to get used to. It's not as simplistic as some of the other Metroidvania games that I've played through, mainly because it's just so detailed, but it does have some nice quality of life features here. Like one, you can pinpoint sections on the map. They had this in Samus Returns, but there's one where if you unlock an upgrade that will allow you to progress through certain doors, let's say, you can then highlight every one of these doors on your map, so then you know exactly where you can go now that you got these upgrades. Just a nice little feature here. I do wish, as far as the upgrades and the missile capacity goes and just things like that, when you look at the map, and if I get a extra missile capacity upgrade, it still shows up on the map, but it's like where I was saying before, it's like those unexplored rooms. It's like at a 30% opacity, but I would much rather prefer that these icons just disappear as soon as I get them, to just kind of declutter this highly detailed map. It's kind of hard to navigate around. Now, to get these upgrades, just like missile capacity and life force, you have to do actually some kind of difficult challenges, and this might be the case for all of the other Metroid games. I didn't 100% complete them, but there are some more difficult Shine Spark challenges. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, Shine Spark is where Samus is running a set amount of distance, and then you kind of like hold down on the movement button, and then you can launch yourself in a certain direction. Now, it is difficult pulling off some of these challenges that require you shine spark through these blocks, that the only way to destroy them is by blasting through them. And so they've curated these like really difficult obstacles in order to break through these shine spark blocks. That being said though, it was nice to have an additional little challenge to play through while I am trying to extend my playtime of this file. It's interesting to see too where she gets some of her upgrades from. Not gonna say anything specific here, but in most of the other Metroid games, you get your upgrades from these Chozo statues, and they're holding it, and you jump and grab the upgrade from their hands. In this one, I felt like she got a lot of her upgrades kind of like Mega Man, where she like absorbs their powers, which I thought was a unique twist on how she gets some of her upgrades, and it did make things a little more exciting than just grabbing them off of a Chozo statue. I absolutely love the cinematics in this game, and it really makes me feel connected to Samus in a way that the other 2D Metroid games didn't do, because she's just, you know, you can't show much emotion or anything like that in Super Metroid. It's just pixels. But in this one, one, there are some very, very cool cinematics here, and it easily put Samus as one of my favorite video game characters of all history. She is just so awesome and BA, and I just love her. She is so cool, and you feel so cool when you are playing as her. She just holds herself in a manner that totally represents that she's gone through all this before. This is nothing new. She'll come across this big, huge, bad boss, and she'll just hold herself like she's not even scared. Like it's just this been there, done this, and I'm just gushing over it now. I'm just rambling, but trust me, the cinematics are awesome. I really wish that in the gallery I was able to re-watch these cinematics over and over again, because I just want to, like, the first time wasn't enough, you know? And I really wish, as far as the boss fights goes, I could do some sort of boss rush mode for this game, because this has easily the coolest bosses in any Metroid game. And I don't think I'm out of line in saying that. As cool as the bosses are, the music itself, I've heard other people really rave about this music, and I don't know, I think that the music is actually pretty forgettable. I even went back to like YouTube and listened to the soundtrack, and I'm like, it's fine, I guess, but I think other Metroid games have a better soundtrack than this one, especially Super Metroid. I think that is the best one of them all. This one, it's not bad music, it's just kind of bland in my opinion, besides the callbacks to other Metroid songs. Now that I am completely finished with Metroid Dread, I'm told that this wraps up the Samus Aran storyline here, and I am so glad that I played through all of these 2D Metroid games. It was just such a treat, and part of me is kind of wondering, like, maybe I should just do it again. I could easily just start with Zero Mission and work my way back up through Dread again, and that is just a testament to how much I enjoy these games, because I never do that. Life is too short to replay games over and over again, but there's something about this series that just really landed with me and resonated with me. Obviously, I will give Metroid Dread a 5 out of 5, and just every single 2D Metroid game I've given this score, so I will give the Metroid Marathon a 5 out of 5. It was a fun ride. And I gotta ask, when is our Metroid Prime collection? Because as much as I enjoy the 2D Metroid games, I am so impatiently waiting to be able to play the Metroid Prime series and even Metroid Other M. It can't be as bad as people are saying, right? I want to play through these first-person Metroid games now, because if I love 2D Metroid games, then there's no doubt in my mind that I would love the Prime series, I think. Well, guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Metroid Dread or the Metroid series as a whole. I just want to geek out, and I want to talk about spoilers for Metroid Dread so bad, but I have to go find someone who's played through this game so I can geek out about it with them. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!